Now, let's go ahead and go to this section when it comes to the test scores. And what do we find here? So we have the mean 79.35, or that's for homework score, but for test scores, 86.1. All right, standard deviation is 17.465. Now you notice here, if it's 5 or above, you're going to round this up to a 7. If it's 4 or below, you're going to keep this as 6. You keep this as 6. But since this thousands place is a 5 or above, we're going to round this up to 7. So that's what I'm going to do right here, 17.47. Keep this within 2 significant figures to the right of the decimal point. And then you would be able to fill out the rest of this here. And all the information is right here. Now I will say that you can ignore this information. This is the standard error of kurtosis. This is the standard error of skewness. You don't need to write down the information. You'll need to write down the skewness and skewness right here and kurtosis right here. You can answer these. You can define these. You can find answers to this in the book, but try to have this in your own words. All right. So number 3, how are the standard deviation and variance related? That's a question that you can get answered by looking at your notes or some of the PPT slides, or even looking at your book. So mathematically, you can find information, but try to express it in words as well as mathematically. So let's move on to this one. Check for normality by checking kurtosis and skewness for both numeric variables, homework score, and test score. We already did that. So we have the information here. And so what we have here for this is going to be the standard error again. This is going to be the standard error, so you're going to not do that. So we're going to account for this area right here, skewness. So we'll put down negative 0.0, or I'm sorry, 1.006. All right, and then for the test score, the skewness is going to be negative 0.1.46, because we're going to round up here. Significant figures, so this is 8, so we round this up to 6. And then kurtosis, negative 0.038. And then kurtosis for test score is 1.33. Again, we're rounding up. Now notice here, if it's between negative 1 and 1, then you have a normality violation. So this is kind of like a general rule. And it's the same thing if it's great or less than negative 2 and greater than positive 2. So if it's greater than 1, or if it's less than negative 1, then these are normality violations. And it's clear that this area for test score, these are this is okay, but this is a normality, or no, this is not okay, sorry. This is a normality violation because it surpasses negative 1. But in this case, kurtosis is within the limits of negative 2 and 2. And so it's more or less the shape of the data is normally distributed for test scores. What we find here for skewness and homework scores, it's slightly over negative 1, and I would say as a general rule, we would say that this is a violation of normality, and so it's not normally distributed. So these are both violated for skewness reasons. And you would write something like, these are not normally distributed because the skewness is less than negative 1. All right, so that should be straightforward. Let's move on to this one. So we want to find the relationship between homework scores and test scores. And the way we can do this is by getting the correlation coefficient, and that shows you the relationship between these two variables. So is there a positive relationship? As you increase homework scores, you have an increase in test scores. or is in a negative relationship. The general pattern of data shows that the lower the test score of a participant, the lower their homework score, or the higher their homework score. Sorry, because it's a negative correlation. One is going one direction, and the other is going the other direction. So the lower their test score, the higher their homework score, or the lower their homework score, the higher their test score. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go into here, and I just want to get into this view just so for general practice you can kind of like orient yourself so that you're looking at the data. We're going to go, and we're just following these directions here, folks. All right. Analyze, correlate, bivariate. Let's go ahead and do that. So we go in here, and I'm just following these directions. Analyze, correlate, bivariate. Alright, so now what we're going to do is drag this over here to the variable box, and drag this over here to the variable box. And then we need to have this checked off. Make sure Pearson correlation is checked off. Two-tailed test, flag significant correlations, and then press OK. And so here is another table with information. So we have homework score. This is a correlations table. Homework score, and we're using a Pearson correlation, and we're saying what is the relationship between homework score and homework score? Well, of course it's going to be a perfect correlation because we're measuring the same thing. We're looking at the same thing. But now, let's say, what is the relationship between homework score and test score? Well, there's a relationship here of 0.956. We'll round this up to the 0.96. So it's a very strong relationship, and it's in the positive direction, almost a perfect correlation. And if we were to do a plot of this, we would find that it would be a straight line that goes on the incline, steadily on the incline, like this. All right, so let's go ahead and write down this information on this homework sheet. And that's right here. Let's see here. Yeah, we're right here. So, what is the relationship between this? You can answer this by looking at these two qualities right here, right? So I'm going to go and just copy and paste this because I want to make this as efficient as possible. So yeah, there is a positive correlation, positive strong correlation between homework score and test score. As homework scores increase, the test scores increase, right? So we have that positive relationship. And now with this, you can answer all this information here. You can answer this question. This is more of a conceptual question. So do you think that homework and test scores differ? So provide some quantitative evidence, and that means that you provide some evidence that are calculations. If you're using the mean, you use it with the standard deviation. So you can't just talk about mean, you have to talk about the relationship with the standard deviation. And so what is the difference between these two variables, homework score and test score? Do you think that they differ? And you can probably answer it with this information as well about correlation. And I probably should mention that when we're talking about a strong correlation, we would use this notation here. So R equals 0.96. That indicates the Pearson-R correlation, and you would need that information. And as we move forward, we're going to use more and more APA format. So that's pretty much this entire lab for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Please send me emails or post some information here if you have any questions.